The first time Ethan realized he might be in trouble was the night Johnson leaned too close. Close enough that Ethan could feel the warmth of his breath, could catch the faint scent of his cologne, dark and intoxicating, like whiskey and pine. It was subtle, a fleeting moment, but it lodged itself deep in Ethan's chest, refusing to dissolve. Ethan had never questioned his loyalty before. His fiancé, Liam, was everything he was supposed to want. Steady, kind, devoted. They had been together for 4 years, engaged for 1, their life meticulously planned out, a wedding in 6 months, a house by next year, a life that made sense. And then Johnson happened. Not that Johnson was new in his life. He had been Ethan's stepbrother for nearly 8 years, a consequence of their parents' whirlwind romance. Their mothers had fallen in love fast, blending their teenage sons into a single household with 4 smiles and awkward first dinners. At the time, Ethan and Johnson had tolerated each other, nothing more. But living together again, as adults, was different. Now, Johnson was everywhere, stepping out of the shower with a towel slung low, throwing smirks across the kitchen, lounging on a couch in nothing but boxers, his toned body sprawled without a care. He moved with an effortless confidence that made Ethan's pulse betray him. And the worst part? Johnson knew. He had always known. Ethan could feel it in the way Johnson spoke to him, the way he looked at him, like he was a secret waiting to be unraveled. It started small. Fleeting glances that lasted too long. Accidental touches that lingered. One night, Liam had come over, bringing takeout from their favorite Thai place. They had curled up on the couch, Liam droning on about wedding venues while Ethan half listened. But across the room, Johnson sat in the armchair, watching. His gaze wasn't casual. It was intent, knowing. And when Liam had leaned in to kiss Ethan's neck, Johnson had smirked. A challenge. Ethan had felt his stomach twist. It wasn't right. He loved Liam. Didn't he? Still, the awareness of Johnson never left him. He could feel it when they were alone, when their shoulders brushed in the hallway, when Johnson's voice dipped just a little lower when speaking to him. But it wasn't until that night, the night Liam was away for work, that Ethan really let himself feel it. The storm outside rattled the windows, the power flickering for brief moments. Rain pounded against the glass, drowning out the world outside. Ethan sat on the couch, nursing a glass of whiskey, his mind restless. Johnson strolled in, wearing nothing but sweatpants, his shirt discarded somewhere unseen. He was damp from the shower, beads of water still clinging to his skin. He stretched, muscles flexing under golden skin, before collapsing onto the couch beside Ethan. "Looks like it's just us," Johnson murmured, his voice edged with something Ethan refused to name. Ethan swallowed. "Guess so." A slow, heavy silence stretched between them, thick as the humid air from the storm. Then Johnson leaned in, not enough to touch, but enough to make Ethan feel caged. "You've been avoiding me," Johnson said, his voice dangerously soft. Ethan let out a tight laugh. "Don't flatter yourself." Johnson tilted his head, studying him. "You sure about that?" Ethan exhaled sharply, turning away, but Johnson didn't let him escape. "You think I don't notice?" Johnson continued, his voice a husky whisper. "The way you look at me when you think I won't catch you?" Ethan's pulse thundered. "That's not." Johnson closed the distance between them, his lips almost brushing Ethan's ear. "Tell me you don't feel it." Ethan's breath shuddered out of him. His skin was hot, his entire body tense, locked in place. This was wrong. And yet, a sudden vibration broke the moment. Ethan jerked back, his heart hammering as he fumbled for his phone. Liam's name flashed across the screen. He stared at it, pulse pounding. A reminder, a lifeline. He had a fiancé, a man who trusted him, loved him, was planning a life with him. And here he was, seconds away from betraying him. Johnson watched him with something unreadable in his gaze. Then, slowly, he leaned back, a knowing smile curving his lips. "You should answer that," he murmured. Ethan sucked in a shaky breath and stood, pressing the phone to his ear as he walked away. "Hey, babe." Liam's voice filtered through, warm and familiar. "You okay? You sound off." Ethan swallowed hard, his stomach twisting. "Yeah," he lied, forcing a smile that no one could see. I'm fine. But as he turned, his eyes met Johnson's again. And in that moment, Ethan knew he was anything but fine. Ethan told himself it was nothing, a moment of weakness, a fleeting impulse that he had no intention of indulging. But then it happened again, and again. Each moment with Johnson felt like walking a razor's edge, dangerous, intoxicating, impossible to ignore. It was the way Johnson looked at him, like he already knew how this would end, like he had already decided. And Ethan was just catching up. It was the way his voice dipped when he spoke, the way he lingered in doorways, the way he never looked away first. And Ethan, despite himself, never told him to stop. Liam was gone again. A business trip, a convenient absence. Ethan had spent the entire day trying to be normal, working, texting Liam, keeping his hands busy, but it was useless. His mind kept drifting to Johnson, to the way his lips had nearly brushed his ear the other night, to the heat that had sparked through his body, unwanted yet undeniably there. By the time the evening rolled around, Ethan had almost convinced himself to lock his bedroom. Ethan could still feel Johnson's touch, phantom traces lingering on his skin like a brand. No matter how many times he told himself it was a mistake, the memory of it, the heat, the hunger, the way his body had given in so easily, wouldn't leave him. Worse, he didn't want it to. Liam was back. His fiancé, the man he had promised forever to, the one who knew his favorite coffee order, who texted him good morning every day without fail, the man who trusted him. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, stirring his coffee mindlessly, watching as Liam scrolled through his phone across from him, oblivious. Guilt coiled in his gut. Johnson entered the kitchen then, shirtless, stretching as he yawned. The tension slammed into Ethan like a physical force. His grip tightened on the spoon. "Morning," Johnson said, voice rough from sleep, eyes flicking toward Ethan in that infuriating, knowing way. Ethan looked away quickly. Liam glanced up and smiled. "You two were up late last night," he said casually. "I heard you talking when I got in." Ethan's blood ran cold. Johnson smirked. "Yeah, we had a lot to catch up on." Ethan's stomach twisted. Liam stretched, oblivious. "Glad you guys are getting along better these days." He leaned over and pressed a kiss to Ethan's temple. It felt like a brand of ownership, a reminder of who Ethan was supposed to belong to. Johnson's gaze flickered, his smirk deepening just a little. This was getting dangerous. The more Ethan tried to ignore Johnson, the worse it got. Liam had always been affectionate, holding Ethan's hand, pressing casual kisses to his cheek, touching him in a way that had once felt natural. Now, each time Liam touched him, Ethan's skin crawled with guilt, because it wasn't Liam's hands he craved. The worst part was Johnson knew it. He took every opportunity to test him, brushing past him in the hallway, fingers barely skimming his waist, pressing too close when reaching for something behind him, holding his gaze a second too long when Liam was right there, completely unaware. Ethan was losing control. One night, Liam fell asleep early on the couch, exhausted from work. Ethan went to the kitchen for a drink, but the moment he stepped inside, Johnson was there waiting. Ethan froze. Johnson leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching him with a slow, lazy smirk. "You're acting weird," he murmured. Even Liam started to notice. Ethan clenched his jaw. "I don't know what you're talking about." Johnson took a step forward. Ethan's breath hitched. "You still lying to yourself?" Johnson murmured, voice low, dark. Ethan's pulse thundered. He should leave. He should walk away. Go back to Liam. Fix this before it spiraled further out of control. But he didn't move, because he didn't want to. Johnson reached out, fingers skimming Ethan's wrist. Barely there, but enough to send a shudder down his spine. "You come undone so easily," Johnson whispered. "It's almost pathetic." Ethan's breath came in sharp, shallow pulls. This was a mistake, but his body betrayed him, leaning in, his lips parting in anticipation. A loud sound from the living room made Ethan snap back. Liam stirred on the couch. Ethan yanked himself away from Johnson like he'd been burned. His entire body shook as he forced himself to step back. Johnson only grinned. "Go back to your fiancé," he murmured. before you do something you can't take back. Ethan swallowed hard, his heart slamming against his ribs. Without another word, he turned and fled the kitchen. The next morning, Liam was getting ready for work, fixing his tie in the mirror. Ethan sat on the bed, watching him, drowning in guilt. Liam caught his gaze in the mirror and smiled. "You okay?" "No, not even close." But Ethan forced a nod. "Yeah, just tired." Liam walked over, brushing a hand through Ethan's hair. "You've been distant lately." His voice was gentle but searching. "You'd tell me if something was wrong, right?" Ethan's throat closed up. Liam trusted him. He didn't deserve it. But before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed. A text. "Johnson, meet me outside." Ethan stared at the screen, his stomach twisting into knots. Liam leaned down, kissing his forehead. "I love you," he said softly. Ethan swallowed against the suffocating weight of his guilt. "I love you too." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Final scene. The inevitable choice. Ethan stepped outside, heart pounding. Johnson was leaning against the car, arms crossed, waiting. The moment their eyes met, Ethan knew he was already too far gone. Johnson smirked. "You came." Ethan exhaled shakily, his hands trembling. "I shouldn't have," he admitted. Johnson's gaze darkened, stepping forward. "But you did." Ethan's breath hitched as Johnson reached for him. No hesitation, no shame. And Ethan, despite everything, let him. Ethan was caught in a war within himself. Every second he spent with Johnson unraveled another piece of his carefully constructed life. And yet, he kept going back. Again and again. The first time had been a mistake, or at least that's what he told himself. A moment of weakness, of giving into something he had no business wanting. But the second time, the third, there was no excuse for that. And Liam still didn't know. Ethan thought he was being careful, thought he could keep his betrayal hidden, compartmentalized in the dark corners of his mind. But Liam wasn't stupid. It started with small things. The way Ethan flinched when Liam touched him. The way his phone was always face down. The way his gaze lingered elsewhere, even when he was supposed to be present. Then one night, Liam said it. "You don't look at me the same way anymore." Ethan's stomach dropped. They were in bed, the room quiet except for the steady hum of the ceiling fan. Liam lay on his side, watching him with something tired, something breaking. Ethan forced a smile. "That's not true." But it was. And the worst part? Liam knew it. A long silence stretched between them before Liam sighed, rolling onto his back. The conversation ended, but the damage had been done. A week later, Ethan came home late. Too late. The house was dark, except for the glow of a single lamp in the living room. Liam was waiting. Ethan froze in the doorway, heart hammering. "Hey, you're still up?" Liam didn't answer at first. Just stared at him, jaw tight, eyes unreadable. Something felt different. Then, slowly, Liam held up Ethan's phone. Ethan's blood turned to ice. "I saw the messages," Liam said, voice eerily calm. "Johnson." Ethan's breath caught. Liam's fingers tightened around the phone. "How long?" Ethan couldn't speak. Liam let out a breathless, humorless laugh. "I already know the answer," he muttered, shaking his head. "I just want to see if you'd say it." Ethan opened his mouth, but what was there to say? Liam's voice cracked. "Did you ever even love me?" Ethan flinched. "Of course I did. I do." But Liam just stared at him, and Ethan felt the weight of the lie between them. Love wasn't supposed to feel like this. Like guilt, like deception, like drowning. Ethan packed a bag that night. Not because Liam told him to. Because he couldn't stay. Because the moment Johnson became an option, Liam was never going to be enough. When Ethan arrived at Johnson's apartment, his hands were still shaking. Johnson opened the door, took one look at him and smirked. "Took you long enough." Ethan exhaled shakily, stepping inside. This wasn't love. This was reckless, messy, doomed to collapse. But right now, it was exactly what Ethan wanted. And that was enough.